Let's welcome now the Buckmaster Show contributor on education, one of 24 outstanding experts in their particular fields, who I am so honored to have these people, been on the team now, some of them since the beginning. We're in our 7th year, 6 full years under our belt. Dr. Robert Hendricks, Associate Professor Emeritus at the UA College of Education. I'm not going to read the full resume today, Bob, because we've got so much to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
All right. The big question is, well, everyone's wondering, this is coming up on Tuesday night. I like to call it TUSD Drama Part 3, and what will happen to Dr. H.T. Sanchez, whose contract technically goes through June, I believe, of 2018.
Yes, it does.
So you have been involved in other districts and consulting in these type of situations. It's not unique to TUSD.
No, it's not. And I've been involved, Bill, in consulting with superintendents who were going out the door and giving them some advice and mentorship. And you're right, it's not a unique situation. In fact, the urban superintendency, of which TUSD is definitely part of, has an average tenure of about 4 years nationally. So it's not unusual for a superintendent to leave. It's really a revolving door.
It's the big city districts that have such issues, so they become very contentious.
Very contentious. And there's about 5 dozen superintendencies across the country that they're under that sort of urban venue. And those superintendents move around a lot.
Let's talk about what are the options for the TUSD board.
Well, as I see it, Bill, there probably are 4 options. There could be some variation of them, but one could be that the board decides, and of course we're not privy to what's happening in closed doors because it's executive session and it's a personnel item, but at this point they could be discussing termination with cause. And
with cause.
With cause.
Yes.
And that would that puts the board in a position of providing a burden of proof. They have to delineate why the superintendent has not fulfilled his responsibilities. And that could be a number of things, but usually they center around violation of statutes, board policies, open meeting laws, a number of things of that nature. So they would have to be very specific about those kinds of situations if they were to go with the termination with cause.
And then if they did go with cause, they would not have to buy out the contract.
Well, I haven't really looked at the contract, but I would say generally the language in the superintendent's contract says that if it's with cause, that there is no buyout.
But then there would be legal recourse if
there's a due process procedure for the superintendent, and the superintendent would have an opportunity to respond with the support of his attorney.
Would he stay
advice.
on during the response period?
That's up to the board.
But typically that is
sometimes
not the
it's
case.
a suspension. Sometimes it's homebound with pay. There's a number of variations to that.
Okay, so that's number one.
The second one would be termination without cause. And that generally centers on board's perceptions of how a superintendent is performing. And, I might use words like, this person's not the right fit, or, we're not getting along, there's not a good chemistry, or communication skills are not where they ought to be. Those are areas that are a little less defined, and they don't quite have the same substance as a for cause reason. And so usually without cause, that termination ends up with a negotiated handshake and a settlement, some kind of a settlement.
What would option 3 be in your opinion?
A resignation.
A resignation, okay.
A superintendent could decide that this is all I want to deal with, and move on. And actually, that's not an uncommon thing this time of year, because there are a lot of superintendency open.
Mm-hmm.
And again, back to the urban superintendency area, a lot of revolving doors, a lot of seats open, and so an individual could possibly pursue another job option.
And then with compensation and that type of a deal, that would be something worked out between both sides.
That would have to be negotiated.
Resignation with some kind of a negotiated compensation,
correct,
most likely.
Correct.
What would option 4 be?
That would be one where the board would sit down with the superintendent and talk about what specified period of time that individual would continue, and hopefully work out some kind of agreement of what the expectations would be for that person by the board. And so that essentially would be an extended time period, but the board would sit down with the superintendent and say, look, we want to reset. There's some things that we'd like to see done differently. If you would agree to these specified items or requirements, you continue for a specified period. It could be the whole length of the contract, could be till the end of the year. Mm-hmm. But that's a very common thing to happen as well.
Okay, just on the surface of it, hearing these 4 options, it seems that the most messy, the one that could result in legal action on kind of both sides, would be the with cause.
Yes, that's the stickiest one, because I think there's a burden of proof on the part of the board. Mm-hmm. that there have been violations, that there are that the superintendent has not followed through on specific things that would be lawful and be expected in terms of statutory or board requirements.
Most common, though, would be, in your experience, would be a resignation and some kind of a settlement between the two parties.
Yes.
Is that pretty much what would be?
That happens.
I don't want to see
and the termination without
kind of
cause
standard,
happens as well.
Without cause.
Yeah. Because realize that boards do change, and within a 3-4 year period, there's the potential of 1 or 2 election cycles, and in that period of time, expectations change. Sometimes boards who are initially enamored with the superintendent are no longer so. Others perhaps ran on a basis of looking for a different kind of leadership. So superintendents have to make adjustments. Boards don't necessarily have to, mm-hmm. because the superintendent works for the board.
Okay.
And one of the things in Arizona that is a little different dynamic in some of the other states is that we have 5-member boards here. There are states, Bill, with 12-member boards.
Wow.
Or 15-member boards. And so
that would
you get all kinds of splits. So here we're talking about a 3 vote for any kind of decision.
All right. Robert Hendricks, always a pleasure. Dr. Hendricks, the Buckmaster Show, contributor on education. He is professor emeritus at the UA College of Education, one-time school superintendent of the year here in Arizona, former superintendent